Hi, I'm AJ with Humbucker Soup. In this video, I'll teach you about pickup magnets and coil wire. If you're new to making guitar pickups, I highly recommend trying to keep things as simple as possible, at least when you're getting started. So first, let's talk about magnets. This one in particular is an Alnico 5, and it kind of falls right in the middle of everything as far as output and tone. If you want something that's a little bit warmer sounding and less output, you could use an Alnico 2. On the other hand, if you want something that's a little bit brighter and more output, you could use ceramic. Now within the Alnico magnets, there's other options such as getting one that's polished smooth or rough cast. And these may affect the tone to varying degrees. It's up to you if you'd like to test those out. The next thing that you have to look at is the dimensions. And this one in particular is fairly common for humbuckers. It's 1/8 of an inch thick by 1/2 of an inch wide by 2.5 inches long. And the thickness has to do with the spacers and shims that you're using. The width has to do with the base plate and the spread of the bobbins. And the length can vary a little bit. A couple of things that you need to know about that is different size magnets could affect the size of your magnetic field. If you're using a bobbin that has slugs, you want to make sure that the magnet is long enough to span across all of the slugs. And another thing to be aware of is if you're trying to replicate a PAF style humbucker, you just want to make sure that you get the dimensions that are vintage correct. Now when it comes to output, it can be a little bit difficult to measure these because they can vary. You can charge these yourselves, but a lot of times you can get them already charged when you order them. So I tested 3 of these out yesterday. They were all Alnico 5 and they're all the exact same dimensions. I had one that came in at 450 Gauss, one at 574, and one at 671. And that's a pretty big variance. And the 450 is probably a little bit closer to what you would expect out of an Alnico 2. On the other hand, I also tested the smaller one that is for a single coil sized rail humbucker. And that one came in at 262. So there's quite a few differences there. The other thing that we need to look at is the coil wire. And if you're just starting out, I highly recommend getting one that is poly-coated. And the reason for that is it's the easiest to solder. Your soldering iron will melt right through the insulation. On the other hand, if you use something like enamel or form bar, you may have to sand the insulation away in order to get a good connection. Now there's nothing wrong with using this if you're a pro. It'll make for some really great sounding pickups. On the other hand, if you're trying to use something that's vintage correct, if you're winding either a PAF or a vintage Strat pickup, you may have to use one of the other 2 options. The next thing that you want to look at is the gauge. So right here I have some that's 42, and over here some that's 43. And either one of these would be suitable for making humbuckers. If you want one that's a little bit lower resistance and maybe less output, you could stick with the 42. On the other hand, if you're trying to get a lot of wire on there and get up into that 14 to 16K range, you probably want to jump up to the 43. And if you really want to get crazy, you could even use 44. But in most cases, these 2 gauges should suit your needs. And if you're winding single coils, in most cases, you can just stick with the 42. Although there is no set rule on that, and you can use whatever you want. I hope you found the information in this video to be helpful, and we'll see you in the next one.